Welcome into the 49er Access podcast. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are going to react and dissect day number 8 of San Francisco 49ers training camp. And let me say this, it was a grueling practice, the longest practice we've had down in Santa Clara. We're going to dive into every single thing that happened, including the big plays, the good plays, the bad plays, and we'll even go into some smaller plays I believe were good notes to end on when we look at the weekend coming up for the San Francisco 49ers. They have 2 practices left that are open to fans, 3 remaining before they head off to Las Vegas for joint practices against the Las Vegas Raiders. So not many left to view at the practice facility in Santa Clara. I'll be there for the next maybe 3 of them, but definitely 2 of them. So today's day 8. We have day 9, day 10, and maybe even day 11 before they head off to Las Vegas. I want to remind you, use our promo code 49ersaccess at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. So, what happened today? We'll dive into quarterbacks, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, even some Brandon Allen today. All four quarterbacks played really well today. We'll dive into all of the things they did, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Not much ugly, I might add, though. But first, the absences. Only one. Nick Bosa still has not reported to training camp and is still looking for a contract extension. Again, that'll happen when it does. Give it time. Give it a week or 2. It'll get done. He'll be there, but isn't there just yet. Some did not practice players are Austin Bryant, who still has an undisclosed injury. He had a helmet and jersey on today, same as yesterday, but still didn't practice. I would assume that's going to remain the same tomorrow, but hope that's not the case. Want to see him back on the field as soon as possible. Kalia Davis, hamstring, did drills on the side today. A lot of light stretching for guys who didn't practice. Robert Beal Jr., the same for him. Aaron Banks in concussion protocol, still doing light stretching on the side on his first day without practicing during training camp. Jalen Moore, left knee bruise, again, doing drills on the side. And Elijah Mitchell joining them with the adductor injury. San Francisco made a move after practice today, placing defensive lineman Darryl Johnson on the injured reserve and signing Dalen Hayes to replace him. So a lot of moving parts in practice today, kind of like yesterday. A lot of young players getting reps with the first and second team. Among them was D'Shawn Jamison, Nick Zakelj, and Leroy Watson still getting second team reps behind Trent Williams, who returned to practice today after a vet day off. Christian McCaffrey was also back on the field today. So a lot of guys back, but a lot of starters and depth pieces off to the side with injuries. And so let's talk about the observations I had during practice today. And one really stood out that I kind of pointed to, and it was like, man, like we really have to appreciate what we have in San Francisco. And seeing Deebo Samuel in the backfield playing running back while Christian McCaffrey's in the slot made me sit back and just say, this is special. Most teams can't do this. And if they can do it, they can't do it very successfully. And San Francisco has just an incredible offense, and seeing that and just kind of trying to predict and think of what it's going to look like come this season. I mean, it just blows my mind. Other guys like Javon Hargrave are starting to put their stamp on practices. Hargrave is somebody who's been double teamed a lot in the first week or so of training camp. And to see him, it was really funny today. John Feliciano coming back off the shoulder strain, who missed practice yesterday. There was a play where Javon Hargrave blew him up. I am talking like off the ground to the ground, like just shoved him to the ground. He's blew up the running play, and I felt bad because I was like, that guy's hurt. Like, don't do that. He was hurt yesterday, and now you're tossing him to the ground. But a really big display of what Javon Hargrave can do for this team. Just immense power in a very short man, but very large man at the same time. Javon Hargrave has so much strength in that very short but stout body of his, and it was good to see him finally get some action where he wasn't double teamed. Other observations, Jordan Mason and Ty Davis-Price just continue to have really good camps. We talked yesterday about with Elijah Mitchell being off the field, this was an opportunity for Mason or TDP to kind of make that next step and kind of put their name in the hat for that running back number 2 role or 3 in Ty Davis-Price's case. And I think both had really strong days. Mason has always been a player that runs with his head down, and he wants to bulldoze somebody. Like, they call him the closer for a reason because, late in games, fourth quarter, you need that 3rd and 4. You need that, 3rd and 1 to ice the game. He is that guy they want out there. And so today, to see him run the same way on 1st and 2nd down, it really shows that the competitive nature in him, that it doesn't matter what my role is currently. I'm always fighting for the next job. And there's no doubt in my mind, they know Christian McCaffrey is the RB1, but to see young players fight and strive to get every single rep they can, and to see them, whether it's possible or not, play as hard as they can to be RB1 on this team, even though it's basically impossible, it just really shows that this running back room, this team, the example is set by the leaders, and to see them set the example for young players like Mason and TDP goes a long way. And I couldn't think of somebody better outside of Christian McCaffrey to do that for these young guys. And I think that's really paying off for them to see someone like Christian McCaffrey, who's been there since OTAs and minicamp, kind of say, look, the road starts here. And to see that carry on and the effort carry into training camp is really impressive for Mason and Ty Davis-Price. TDP just continues to just rock the freaking house down. A couple nice runs today where the O-line just didn't create a hole for him. He cut back and found room to run. It was really impressive to see him. One thing about him last year was running into the offensive line too much, not being able to find a hole. This year, you can tell he's so much more comfortable in the pocket, or at least running behind the offensive line and finding space for himself. And I could argue he probably had, if not for Christian McCaffrey earlier in practice, had one of the best runs of the day. Could have been a huge touchdown run if they can actually tackle. So another good day for young running backs in San Francisco's backfield. Braden Willis, he continues to stack days. The tight end position's up for grabs. It's Kittle and everybody else. And we thought it might be Cam Latu or Warner or Dwelly. Right now, if I had to stake my claim on somebody that I really liked since he was drafted, and somebody who I think is starting to pick up the pace and kind of prove himself to the coaching staff and players around him, is Braden Willis. Today, and even a few days ago, a handful of catches, and it has really impressed me in the last 3 or so practices. Again, a handful of catches and a ton more that could have actually happened had the quarterbacks actually hit him in stride and hit him accurately. Could have had a touchdown earlier this week in practice, and again, a couple more catches today. He's really showing promise, like not just blocking, which is his strength, but actually in the receiving game, in the pass catching game. And I think with tight end number 2 being up for grabs right now, it's early in camp, and I get that. He really has shown some promise. A long way to go. 3 preseason games to play. Things can still change and alter, but right now, if I had to pick somebody, I like what he's showing, and I would make him tight end 2 currently because he's doing it consistently, blocking and pass catching. Somebody else who's young, a rookie, late round pick this year, Ronnie Bell, continues to impress since pads have come on. Had a couple nice catches today. One of them being fighting through contact with the defensive back, caught the football, shook off the contact, and ran for a big gain towards the sideline. The timing wasn't perfect with Ronnie Bell on the play from Trey Lance, but to see him, again, fight through contact, keep his eyes on the ball, then move upfield is really impressive. One thing that kind of irked me with him early and made me say, I'm not sure, was his consistency with his hands. That's been cleaned up a lot since pads have come on. And I think we're seeing him, again, once the pads go on, that is where certain players turn things up. The heat gets hotter, and you figure out who can actually play and whatnot. And Ronnie Bell seems to be one of those players that can actually go out there and play with the pads on, and it can actually, thrive in the NFL. Again, during practice, not games, but practice. That's where you start and you build upon it. And Bell and Willis are both doing that currently. Another guy who continues to stack days and who I think is going to be this team's fourth, if not third linebacker, is Marcelino McCrary-Ball. He's one of those players where he's a name you don't think of because it isn't a Warner or a Greenlaw. And he isn't a name you look towards on the roster and go, yeah, that guy's going to do something. But knowing he was here last year and the potential he has shown, and to see the growth in just year 2 as a leader, but also in run defense, in coverage, like there's real improvement here with Marcelino McCrary-Ball, where I don't want to say he's special or get too hyped, but there's something there where he might be this team's linebacker number 3. There was a play today at practice where he leveled fullback Jack Coletto, forcing an incompletion, and really even later in practice disrupted a running play, and he nearly pushed the guard over and pushed him into Jordan Mason in the backfield. It was another good day for the second-year linebacker, and I'm really impressed with how far he's come along since last season. I also want to dive in here to the cornerbacks, because I think today was a really good practice for 2 players in certain, and one of those being D'Shawn Jamison. I've talked a lot about him on the podcast, where he is someone I pointed to and say, look out for that guy. Ever since I've seen him in OTAs and minicamp, I said he's scrappy. He's very physical at the line of scrimmage, sticky in coverage, and you can tell he's someone who fights for every rep. He's someone that, he has a lot to lose here, where undrafted guy could easily get written off and cut. You can tell he is pushing and fighting and clawing his way to make this roster. And to see that, like, he has that dog in him, like he has that DAWG in him, and to see him stand out and to hear what actually Steve Wilks has had to say about him, and even Mooney Ward yesterday saying, I learned from him, and to hear a all-pro level cornerback say they learned from an undrafted cornerback is really impressive. And to think that it's very easy for an all-pro starting caliber cornerback in Mooney Ward to just write off a young player like that or not listen to him, to think that I can teach you, you can't teach me. And not only hear that Mooney Ward's open to it, to hear it, it's actually working is really impressive. That D'Shawn Jamison's already adding value to this team, and games haven't even started yet. There was a few routes where he undercut and almost picked off Sam Darnold during one-on-ones. And there was also a play in one-on-ones as well where at the line of scrimmage, he just jammed a guy and wouldn't let him get out his route. And it was a really good play. And you can tell that he values every single inch, every single yard of the field, and is not willing to give that up easily. And to hear what Steve Wilks said, and I have the quote in front of me, very impressed. He's definitely made strides from spring and came back and built on his repertoire, his toolbox. A young player willing to grow, willing to grind, those are the guys you want on this team, and those are the guys that actually make the team. To hear Steve Wilks say, very impressed. He said it twice, actually. I'm very impressed. Very impressed. When Steve Wilks talks, unlike Kyle Shanahan sometimes, you listen, and to hear him talk up and hype up a young cornerback like Jamison, I have him making the roster right now, albeit very early, but he's really impressed me, and I think he's really made a mark on the coaches and the teammates around him. Somebody else who I think Steve Wilks loves, I have hammered the table for him the entire offseason, said him like he cut early, could be on the bubble. I don't think that is the same anymore. I think that's kind of the narrative has changed around his name. That's Ambry Thomas. Similar to Jamison, you can tell that he's clawing and fighting for every inch, where he realizes how close he is, or at least was, to getting cut, and that it's kind of made him desperate in every single route, every single rep he takes. And during 1v1s, he had 2 pass blocks and was really strong in coverage, did not let guys get off the line. And during team drills, he was guarding George Kittle, who is much taller, much larger than him, has like 40 pounds on him. And he was physical and forcing incompletion. And to also see on top of that, him taking not only steps on the field, but also off the field. He has taken somewhat of a leadership role amongst younger or similar aged or experienced cornerbacks in the room. There was a play today during 1v1s where Samuel Womack, who was having himself kind of an inconsistent camp, he got beat on a ball and Thomas came over and started coaching him up a little bit. And to see a young player who, like Thomas, who has been there at the bottom, almost being cut last year, being written off last year after a relatively good rookie season, to see him come along next to Womack and kind of say, look, here's where I can help you. Here's where we can grow, we can teach, and we can grow together. That's really impressive and important to see that the impact that he's having on the field in his actual reps and play. He's also trying to do the same off the field with his teammates too, but hey, look, we all have to get better here. How can I help you improve? And to see that a young player you wouldn't expect, like when I say Ambry Thomas, you don't say teacher, you don't say coach along with it. You think of might get cut, isn't very good. And I think that, at least in my mind, is starting to change. Again, there's games to be played, practices to be had, but there is real growth happening with Ambry Thomas, and it's really impressive to see. Him and Jamison are starting to leave their mark on the coaching staff, and you can see that they are starting to kind of win them over as they try to, see what they have in them and see how far they can actually grow as players. Somebody else who is brand new to the team has stood out in his 2 or 3 practices. That is Taco Charlton. Signed on Tuesday, and I mentioned earlier in the podcast that night that he looked pretty good. He looks leaner. He looks meaner. And, thinking about last year and thinking about a player who you don't expect to come into camp, a player you don't think's going to make this team, but does have an impact on the team during the year. It has a pretty big one last year with D'Shawn Jamison. And to think that Taco Charlton could have that kind of impact, where it's a guy who, although very different in their experience levels, Gibson being like 11-year vet, Charlton's like a 4-year vet, failed first-round draft pick, very different in their experience levels and where they're at in their career. But Taco Charlton just feels like a Chris Koceric guy. Lean, mean, aggressive, needs this to work out to save his career. And someone who you kind of write off and go, the only reason why he's here is because Bosa isn't here yet, which is the case technically. But I think when you hear guys like Alex Baird are having a good camp and might make the team, I think San Francisco would rather have a failed first-round draft pick with potential over a guy like Barrett, who's having a good camp, mind you. But he just feels like a guy that a vet comes into camp, you don't think much of, but works his butt off and ends up making the team and plays, whether it's a depth role or a pivotal role down the stretch of a season. Like, we're talking about Clelin Ferrell being, the ardent key of the team. Why couldn't it be Taco Charlton? They're very similar in how they play, aggressive, and, have not lived up to the potential of being a first-round pick or second-round pick in Ferrell's case, but guys who you look at and say, you should be better than you actually are, and 2 guys who want to prove themselves. I don't see why Charlton couldn't be that guy this year if he makes the team. Again, it's early. We're 8 days in, mind you. So let's not forget, we're pretty much a week and a half into practices and training camps, so this could be nothing in a month or even a week. But I think when you hear, again, Steve Wilks talk about a player, to hear him say, and the quote is, he got off the plane and started making play after play, there was an instant impact, a instant high motor in Taco Charlton in run defense and trying to get the quarterback. I mean, there were certain plays in day one, he was just blowing up Watson at left tackle. And to see that kind of continue in day 3, I can really see him making this team if things progress the way they currently are trending. But again, time will tell. Other 2 guys who I noticed before we get to the quarterbacks are Diamador Lenore. He kind of has gone, I don't want to say under the radar, because we've all talked about how good he's looked, or at least I have, in OTAs and minicamp. But during training camp, he's kind of been not non-existent. That's not the word, but he's been kind of invisible, excuse me, because he hasn't made a lot of great plays, and that's kind of a good thing for a cornerback to not have to make great plays. But today, I think, was one of those days you point to and say, there was noticeable great coverage, noticeable, pass defenses. And I think for him, he's had a good camp. And I think because he was so great in OTAs and minicamp, that we kind of said, yep, he's going to have a good year and he'll be fine. But to finally see at least, the plays in action and go, wow, like he's starting to kind of, I don't want to say put it together, but you can just see the momentum shifting for him into having a good year to maybe a great year. He was really sticky in coverage today. And even the reception he gave up, he was right there. It took just an elite, insane top 10 receiver moment from Brandon Ayuk to actually catch the football. Lenore was draped all over him. And it was really one of those plays you point to and say, like, Jesus, how did Ayuk catch that? And also, like, Lenore, great coverage. Like, there was no the way he caught the football. Lenore should have won that rep 9 out of 10 times, and this happened to be that 10th time he didn't get it right. And so for Lenore, the ceiling is so high for him. The fact that he's going to be this team's cornerback number 2, he's an undersized guy, but you can tell he just. And maybe it's the Steve Wilks, maybe it's the guys that San Francisco likes to pick up, scrappy, smaller guys that just want to win every single rep, who are grabby in a good way, who he calls himself the hyena, right? But in this case, he doesn't like the scraps. He wants that number 1 receiver. He wants to guard the other team's number 1 guy. He wants to kind of prove himself. He's smaller, but he can still guard the best guy across from him. And I think for Lenore to see that today, more than any other day in camp thus far, it was a really good sign. I'm happy for him because he deserves that recognition this year. All the work he's put in during last year and OTAs and minicamp this year. Like, he looks really, really good. The other guy who is kind of a vet now, it's weird to say that, he's still young, but is Isaiah Oliver. He's quietly really good. I didn't think he was a target of theirs coming into the season, and I figured they'd bring back somebody else or they pick up somebody else or draft somebody, mind you. But being a long-armed slot cornerback, a nickel, knowing that he's comfortable there, his long arms definitely help in how great he was today in not letting guys get out of their breaks in 1v1s. And he's someone who I think when you look at him, you don't think of a nickel cornerback. You don't think of, a quick guy, which he really isn't a quick guy, but his size allows him to keep up with smaller guys and also guard guys like Kittle or bigger receivers like D'Shawn Jennings, who, usually outmatch a smaller nickel or smaller nickel cornerback. That doesn't happen for him. Like, he locked down Snead and Conley during one-on-ones today. And I know that's kind of, it's Snead and Conley, I get it, but you can only guard who's in front of you, and he was really good today in 1v1s. I wanted to give him credit. He had a forced fumble a couple days ago. Like, he's, quietly under the radar putting together a really good camp for a really big position at nickel this year, replacing Jimmy Ward. Like, they need him, and he's been really good thus far. But let's get to the quarterbacks, because that's what everybody ever wants to talk about. At 11 p.m. on Friday night, August 4th, we are talking quarterbacks: Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and even Brandon Allen. But I want to remind you one more time, use that promo code 49ers Access at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Okay, the quarterback position today. As a blanket statement, they were all good. As a blanket statement, I was impressed in many different areas from every single guy. There were some things I didn't like, We'll talk about those, but overall, I'm putting it out there. I liked what every single quarterback did today, from Brock Purdy all the way down to Brandon Allen. I think the quarterback room has been really impressive this year, where in years past it's been Jimmy and then, Trey or Jimmy, Nick Mullins, and Beathard, and you're like, Jimmy Garoppolo, please don't get hurt, and then he gets hurt and the team sucks in 2020. And then Jimmy and Trey, where you're like, Jimmy, and they're going to battle it out with Trey Lance, and you're hoping Jimmy's healthy, but you're intrigued by Trey, but he's a rookie and really raw, so the quarterback room really isn't that great. Then last year, you got Jimmy, you got Trey, you got Purdy, and the quarterback room was really strong last year too, but Jimmy was here late in camp and didn't practice much, and Purdy really wasn't getting, Purdy hype because he hadn't played much yet. Now you have Purdy off the hype, post-injury, Trey Lance in year 3, is Sam Darnold the reclamation project, and Brandon Allen, Joe Burrow's backup, and you're like, okay, there are 4 competent quarterbacks in this room playing really good football and doing things that at a certain point or at a certain place you can point to and say, this guy could start this year, or this guy could play this year, and this team can win games with them playing. And so today, on Friday, again, it's really impressed by all of them, starting with Brock Purdy. He was 15 for 21 during team drills, moved the ball drills. He did throw a pick, but also scored 1 touchdown. I thought today was kind of a mixed bag for Brock Purdy. I really love what he did today, being aggressive down the field. We haven't really seen that much in training camp from any of the quarterbacks, but him and Brandon Allen today, they kind of have this F-it mentality of like, I'm throwing it down there. If it's a flag, if it's a pick, if it's a touchdown, I don't care. I'm doing it. You can tell they came out with the mindset of, I'm going to test this defense today. And I like that, because not only does it help the quarterbacks and where the ball should go, but also helps receivers, contested catches, and defensive backs guarding go balls. I like that stuff. It keeps you on your toes. And if you're not aggressive, you're never going to hit those throws come the regular season. Like, you have to take risks in games to win games sometimes. And Purdy and Allen have done that, at least today, a lot. There were some issues with that being said. The first go ball was to George Kittle on the left sideline. And there's been mixed reporting on this, and that may be determined by where you were standing or sitting when this happened. From my perspective, and from others as well, this ball was underthrown. Like, this ball was underthrown. It was towards the left sideline of the field, and it was George Kittle 1v1 with Dre Greenlaw. And again, this ball was underthrown. This ball should have been over George Kittle's back shoulder, closer towards the sideline, and kind of let him get under it a little bit, and either tiptoe out of bounds or give him some space to run with the football. It was underthrown. But that doesn't mean I don't like that throw being made. When you have Kittle on Greenlaw, or let's be honest here, when it's Kittle on any linebacker, maybe outside Fred Warner in the entire NFL, I want that throw being made. Give your star All-Pro, Pro Bowl tight end, the number 2 guy in football, the second best tight end receiver in football, give him a chance to make that play. In this case, I like the aggressiveness. Kittle made a great catch on it. You have to take risks, right? You got to put your balls to the wall sometimes. If you ain't risking it, you ain't getting the biscuit, right? That's the saying, right? Risk it to get the biscuit, right? Purdy is doing that stuff. Purdy's out there taking risks, doing things you have to do to win football games. And while the ball, again, was underthrown, I like that throw in this instant, because, look, if you're not giving Kittle a chance to make that play now, that's not going to happen come game 1 against Pittsburgh or game 2 against the Rams or come playoff time. You have to get ready to make those plays, and Purdy right now is willing to do that. That's starting caliber quarterback stuff. The other one, though, that's where the problems really arise, is because he had one that he threw to Deebo Samuel, left sideline again, he was double covered. Purdy didn't look off the safety. He floated this football. The other ball to Kittle, not floated. Nice ball, just underthrown. This one floated up in the air, too high, and really did not give Debo any chance to catch this football. Hufanga glided under it, but dropped it, hit his hands and fell on the ground. For Hufanga, catch that ball, please. Do not be Jaquiski Tart. That is why you took his job. Do not be Jaquiski Tart. But back to Purdy, you cannot throw this ball. This is the one you cannot throw. Not into double coverage, not looking off the safety, not floating it over there. This ball will be picked off 9 times out of 10. You cannot make that throw. Be aggressive to George Kittle on Greenlaw 1v1. Not to Debo Samuel double coverage and floating a duck towards a safety. You cannot do that. So 50-50 here. I like what he's doing, being aggressive, but sometimes, like, if you're going to do that, you have to make sure it's the right situation where, again, know your matchup, look off the safety, and don't float the football. It's going to get picked off. And he actually, funny enough, was picked off later in training camp and during practice and it was a weird play. I know when you see, on a tweet or a report somewhere, it says Brock Purdy, 15 for 17, whatever he was today, 1 touchdown and 1 pick. Your first mind is 1 pick? Well, that's not good. Interception, oh man, turnover, gross. That's your first thought, right? That was mine when I wasn't going to training camp. It was, oh my goodness, Jimmy Garoppolo, 5 interceptions. My goodness, what the heck happened? Then you're there, you see the context. It was a weird one. It was a really weird pick today because when the ball was snapped, it was almost like the offensive line didn't block anybody. I'm not sure if it was, miscommunication on their end or like whatever happened. It was weird. It was like the ball was snapped, the entire defensive line gets into the backfield instantly, and everyone's kind of standing there like, what just happened? What do we do? And Purdy and really the entire team kind of gave up on the play. And he sat there and kind of looked and was like, okay, I'll throw the football, I guess. And then a flat-footed toss it to Jordan Mason, overshot him, and Gibson picks it off. Now, yes, was it a pick? Yes. Was it a sack? Probably would have been come game time maybe, but I don't play that game, so I don't know. Was it a bad play? Yeah. Whether it was a pick or a sack or whatever it was, or the old line just was like, we don't know what we're doing, that can't happen come game time. And that's a play you look at and go, what? Should I just wash that from my memory? How do I count that? Like, that is an outlier of like, that doesn't look right. That's not how that's supposed to go. How do I put that in my notes? How do I tweet that out? Because you don't know what really happens. You don't know if there was miscommunication or whatever. You just point to it and say, I don't think that's how that was supposed to go. That doesn't look right to me. But when you see interception next to Purdy's name, I want to explain to you that play to me wasn't the worst thing in the world. That felt like kind of a wash play of nonchalant, like whatever, plays over with, throw it, give it up, and move on. The Hufanga drop pick was the bigger issue to me, where if you want to be aggressive, you got to make sure you're looking off safeties and not throwing into double coverage. That was the more egregious one to me. But again, I still like the aggressiveness by Brock Purdy today because you take a risk, you get a big play. That was a big difference in his game compared to Jimmy Garoppolo, which took this offense to the next level. Christian McCaffrey, big impact, I get that. Brock Purdy was unscared. He was not scared at all to take risks. Many fans point to, he had so many dropped interceptions last year. Yes, those are things you have to clean up for sure. But if you don't take risks, sometimes you're not going to reap the reward. And for Brock Purdy to do that and show the strides now off the injury, it's a really good sign for him because, I talked about plenty of times here, like 85% health with the arm. I want to see him stretch it out. Today, I think we're seeing that process where he's supposed to early next week, if not by Monday, get off with a 2 days on, 1 day off, and start going 3 days on, 1 day off. So I think was kind of that progression towards that level for him. And it's a good sign from the quarterback coming off a major injury like Brock Purdy's. But I also think even though throws were dangerous, even though there were throws that were picked off, I think he had a really good day today. When it came to move the ball drills, I thought he was efficient. I thought he looked very, very competent during move the ball drills. He looked like this team's starting quarterback during move the ball drills. There was a play that we all kind of said, "Oh, like that was scary," but we all kind of laughed at it too because during, I believe it was team drills, Clelin Ferrell, who, mind you, had hit the ball out of Purdy's hand earlier this week, which made us all go, "Oh my God, is he okay?" Today, he was rushing the passer and kind of got pushed towards Brock Purdy's feet. And I'm not kidding you. This fool freaking dolphin dived the opposite direction. He said, "Nope, I'm not hitting the quarterback again." He learned his lesson the first time. And even Brock Purdy said when he hit his arm earlier in camp that it wasn't a big deal. It's a football play. You're playing defense. I'm playing offense. Good job on you. Let's move on. But today it was like, I am making sure I am not touching the quarterback. So he dolphin dived out of the way to make sure he missed Brock Purdy. But the rest of Purdy's outing was really good to me. There's a play on Twitter you can see I put out there, what they had in the highlight reel today during practice. It was called Hella Highlights on the Instagram or Twitter. But the highlight was Purdy to Ayuk over the middle, where it was like 20 push yards on a crosser, and Ayuk went up over Lenore. Talked about it earlier, talking about Lenore, but went up over Lenore, caught it, and it was an amazing play. It's like he almost throws 2 picks earlier, does throw one to Gibson, but then makes this perfect throw to Brandon Ayuk. Like, it's precision over the middle. Like, and when we talk about, plays that, like, when you look at what Brock Purdy did today, and you, like, when you look at what Brock Purdy did today, you can criticize the interceptions and some of the inaccurate throws, but today during team drills, I don't think you can leave that saying he's just not the guy. Like, I'm seeing certain people leave putting Trey Lance being the starting quarterback and Sam Darnold 2 and Purdy 3. No, that's not the case. And then those guys had good days. Those guys have had a good training camp altogether by far. But no. So he goes up and gets the football. Great play. It was a play where I just sat back and said, Shanahan loved that. Like, that's a play Shanahan said. Like, he is salivating right now. He's drooling, being like, that's what I like. That is, oh my God, Brock Purdy. Oh, geez. Like, Shanahan's sitting there being like, that was oh my God. Then later he throws a touchdown to Deebo Samuel, and there was a scare here too because Deebo caught the touchdown towards the pylon on the right side of the end zone, went up and got it. Great placement by Purdy. Excellent job by Deebo going up and get it. This was a, Deebo Samuel receiver 1 against Mooney Ward, cornerback number 1, and that was a battle for the football. Nice touchdown, great throw. But Deebo here, it was scary for a second because you're thinking, okay, he's had a really good camp thus far. He's got himself in shape. He's kind of figured things out with his health and his weight placement. And he's supposed to have a really big year for this team. I know fans are upset with him because last year he himself said he wasn't good, but he was pretty good still in my book. But fans are like, you got paid all this money and you weren't good enough. And for Deebo Samuel to go down, catch the ball, go down, and immediately, kind of roll over writhing in pain, you're like, oh my goodness, did he break a foot? Did he break a hip? Did he hurt his shoulder? What's going on here? And he was on the ground for like a minute or two. Then he got back up on his feet to a rousing applause by the fans. But, you're kind of thinking, okay, like, what's wrong? And thankfully, it seems like it was only a stinger or knocked the wind out of him because he got back on the field later. But it was a very scary moment for Deebo Samuel. They were like, oh my goodness, did this team's, receiver number 1, receiver number 2, how long is he going to be hurt for? Because we got guys getting hurt left and right. Moore, Bryant, Banks, Mitchell. You're like, who else can get hurt? And Deebo goes down. You're like, for the love of God, like, don't let it be Deebo. But he got up, got back in the field. He's seemingly okay. But Brock Purdy's his outing didn't stop there, because there was a play that happened later in practice, again to Brandon Ayuk, over the middle on a slant. And they marked Ayuk down before he reached the end zone. But this throw, to me, is the reason why Kyle Shanahan called Brock Purdy the real deal yesterday after practice. This was a perfect on-time, out-of-the-break slant route, perfect placement of the football, right into the receiver's hands, perfect timing to give his playmaker the ability to do more with the football. This is the kind of play that makes Kyle Shanahan make comments like he's the real deal. It's a play like this that makes Kyle Shanahan say, yep, I am reaffirmed in him being this team's starting quarterback. I know the mistakes early may have kind of muddied people's expectation of Brock Purdy today, or made him say, bad practice. It wasn't a bad practice. I think that we are seeing Brock Purdy climb the mountain of recovery, and it's taking step by step, and we're seeing that the next step taken every single day. And today was another one of those steps in his progress back. Again, 2 days on, 1 day off. He's supposed to be 3 days on, 1 day off coming up next week, barring something crazy happening. He said he's taking it 1 day at a time. I get that kind of the cliche, but we can see Brock Purdy starting to kind of get back to himself. I believe Jack Hammer had a stat saying, rough couple of days at the beginning, but right now, 69% completion percentage. I know it's a stat I don't love to read off, but it's an indication as to where he is efficiency-wise. He's starting to look like the Brock Purdy of old. He isn't there just yet. He's not 100% just yet, but he's healthy. He's moving. He's growing towards that. He's being aggressive with the football and pushing the football down the field, hitting his crossers, and doing things to reaffirm Kyle Shanahan's belief in him being the starting quarterback of this football team. The man who got his first go-round with the second team was Sam Darnold today. And was Darnold perfect? No. I think he was kind of hampered down in move the ball drills by them running the football like 6 times in a row. I was really impressed with the second team offensive line during move the ball drills, at least Jason Poe and Nick Zakel, because they opened holes for Jordan Mason in TDP. When a second team defense cannot stop the second team offensive line from opening up holes and freeing up the running back, and they do it like 5 times in a row, that's really impressive. I want to give them kudos. That may have skewed what Sam Darnold could do offensively. In move the ball drills for Sam Darnold and Trey Lance, Sam Darnold had a second down somewhere, and they kicked a field goal. For Trey Lance, I believe it was 3rd down, and did the same thing. So they couldn't or didn't get the opportunity to kind of complete their, their 4 downs of move the ball drills in the red zone. Kind of weird, but happened to all the guys besides Brock Purdy. So it's not like it was that big of a deal. Just wanted to mention it here. If someone brings it up to you, it wasn't that big of a deal. It happened to everybody else but Brock Purdy. But Sam Darnold today, a lot of dink and dunk. A lot of dink and dunk. That kind of happened yesterday too, until we got to team drills. A lot of dink and dunk early, but then later in the practice, you can see the flip or the switch flipped. I can never get that right. The switch flipped for Sam Darnold. And there was a play today I want to highlight. Again, a lot of dink and dunk, but there was one play that I talked so much about this on this podcast and on Twitter, that when I talk about Sam Darnold can make Kyle Shanahan comfortable, it was his crosser to Deebo Samuel over the middle, where he hits Deebo on the right side, crossing over to his left side, catches it, perfect placement, perfect timing, gives Deebo the chance to make a big play in open space. And what does Debo do? He does what Debo does best. Runs right by a defender. Jair Brown had no chance. Jair Brown, I feel bad because I don't want to cap on him because he's had a very quiet training camp. But this is one of those moments you learn when it comes to taking routes against a player like Debo Samuel. He can run by you in a split second, and Debo did just that. It was boom, perfect crosser over the middle. Debo's in space, and Jair Brown's like, I'm going to come get you. And Debo's like, okay, rookie. Runs right by him. Would have been a touchdown. No one would have got him. But that's a play where I look at it and I go, okay, that is the exact same thing Brock Purdy did over here that Sam Darnold just did here. And it's stuff like that, plays like that, perfectly timed slants and crossers over the intermediate middle of the football field that will make Kyle Shanahan comfortable with Sam Darnold. He showed that today. But I don't want to leave tonight without discussing everyone's favorite quarterback, the social media darling that is Trey Lance. Today he was 8 for 11. Again, what does that matter? I'm not sure. Fans care about that. I truly don't. But if you do, I'm not mad at you. I understand. 8 for 11 today. He had kind of an up and down practice, in my opinion, because of things he couldn't even control. Like Brock Purdy had the weird pick with the offensive line not doing his job, and he kind of, just kind of floated the football over there. Where Trey Lance, I believe he got stepped on or tripped by his offensive line today, and then he actually made a great play where the ball was snapped low. He picked it up, didn't panic, showed composure, kept the play alive, and found the running back open for a nice gain. So there is growth there. We are seeing Trey Lance mature, I believe, in the pocket, where as a rookie, and even last year with little reps, he would have panicked on that play, or maybe would have panicked on that play. And we're seeing the maturity of like, look, I have the football. It's secure. I can still make a play here. The play isn't over after one mistake, whether it's a bad snap or a falling down. Like, we are seeing him grow in the pocket. I know that doesn't matter in practice because come game time, there's players trying to kill you on the other side. And so when the heat comes in those games in preseason and maybe come regular season, if he actually plays, we'll see hopefully more of that. But it's a good sign from him who hasn't gotten reps in live action against other teams in the regular season to see that, okay, we are seeing some form of growth from Trey Lance outside of, his mechanics or his passing. We are seeing composure in the pocket when things break down, not just pressure getting to him, but a bad snap or being tripped in the pocket. We are seeing things that he can't affect or he hasn't caused not affect how he plays, which is really important to see from a young quarterback. But the throws he made today, I thought there were a lot that were behind some people. I also think he stood tall in pressure. A lot of times stood in the pocket, was composed. Like, there was some good and there was some bad, kind of a mixed bag again from him. I know fans were calling him and said that he had, the best day of the 3 quarterbacks or 4 quarterbacks. I don't think that's the case. I wouldn't say that, but I wouldn't say it was a bad day by any means. There was a play today where, and I thought it was a great throw, where he hit Jennings towards the left side, kind of over the middle, crossing over the middle, going to his left. He put this ball in just the perfect place. The linebacker was kind of at an angle where if he led Jennings a little more, it may have been tipped. So he threw it behind him a little bit, but not enough where he couldn't catch it. You can see it on Twitter as well, on my Twitter. And he kind of reaches back for it, catches it, gives Jennings room to run with the football. But this was my favorite throw of the day. Purdy's were great. He looked really good. Darnold had a really good throw as well. But this throw, I think it just made me really excited and giddy, because as soon as it happened, I said, man, that was wow. Like, that's why they drafted you. the amount of velocity on the throw and accuracy it takes to fit that above the linebacker in the space he did, that's why they drafted Trey Lance. I know people have said on Twitter the ball's behind Jennings. No offense to many of those people. They weren't there. That ball was not going to be picked off by someone behind Jennings. Nobody was there. Safety was too far back. And the angle of where the linebacker was lined up, that ball was in a perfect place. And look, let's be clear here. Trey Lance can make a good throw and us not complain about it on Twitter, and so can Brock Purdy. I don't know why there are people who are fanboys of certain players and not just the team. I get you feel like Trey Lance has been mistreated. You feel like Brock Purdy, he's only 8 games, and some of you feel like Brock Purdy's Joe Montana. Can we just take this thing one day at a time? Can we just take this thing as, the best quarterback will play, and if he stinks, he'll get replaced? That's how this thing works. It's how it's going to go. Trey Lance can make a nice play. You want to know why? He's a good quarterback. Brock Purdy can make a good play. Want to know why? He's a good quarterback. Sam Darnold can make a good throw. You want to know why? Because he has the arm talent. But this was a great throw. It made me sit back and say, this is why I fell in love with his tape in 2021. I am someone who has said since the beginning, I wanted Trey Lance. And unfortunate things have happened on his journey in San Francisco. I don't think he'll start this year. I said it plenty of times, but this throw, it was perfect. It made me sit back and say, the potential is still there. And we are seeing growth and maturation every single practice. He's had 5 really good, if not just good, practices in a row. 5 strong, competent practices in a row. That makes me excited. Like the fact that he can go into Las Vegas, potentially having, 6, 7, 8 good practices in a row, a week of good practices, and then go into, shared camp and whatever they're called again. I'm forgetting their name. But joint practices, go into those and have confidence against a relatively bad Raiders defense. Then go into a preseason game and with confidence, maybe tear that defense up. Like, those are really good things. Those are things where sometimes I feel like certain people, when they see one throw, think that's how the entire day went. It wasn't. But neither was Purdy's bad throws. Neither were Trey's bad throws. One throw doesn't define your day. But when you put together 5 good practices of scoring touchdowns, making accurate throws, yes, there are throws Trey Lance still misses. The easy ones are kind of still there, but I don't think they're that big of a deal where it's like X amount quarterback 3 now. It's like, okay, like you have improved on the intermediate stuff. Your touch is getting better, which is really hard to improve. Your mechanics look stronger. Brian Greasy's praising you. Kyle Shanahan's praising you. Other teammates are praising you. I don't know if anything he has done this week has changed anybody's mind on him. But if you were doubting him, I think that is lessened, or at least it should have. And if a coach on the team doesn't believe in what Trey can do after 5 really good practices, I don't understand that. Again, a lot of games to go, a lot of practice to be had. But when you string together 5 good practices in a row, and you make good plays, you make some great throws, you bounce back from your struggles, you put the ball in the right place at the right time. And I think Trey still needs to be more consistent with his throws, but I do think we're still seeing that improve as well, where Trey Lance is having the best through 8 days. This has been his best training camp of his career, and it should be. But the fact is, it hasn't been, but it is now. And I think when we're talking about quarterback 2 or 3, Darnold's been fine. I've said plenty of times he can make Shanahan feel comfortable, and I think he's doing that right now. He has done that already. But I think Trey, in my humble opinion, which means nothing to Kyle Shanahan or anybody in that building, he has looked really good. Really, really good. I think we should give this kid a break for what he's gone through. And I think we should support him because we might need him. And I think right now, he should be instilling confidence in us as fans because being there, seeing him improve, seeing Purdy and Darnold play, those three guys, Lance, Purdy, Darnold, they've all played really well. And the last guy today, Brandon Allen, I mean, I would still put him at quarterback number 4, but today they made the point to get him reps. They said, you are going to play. And like Purdy, he was aggressive downfield. He's unafraid to make a mistake. He's good in play action. I still think right now he's quarterback number 4. And I do think he struggled early and often where I don't think he's reached that point of the conversation of quarterback 3 yet, or even 2. But right now it's a 3-horse race for quarterbacks 2 and 3. It's Darnold, Allen, and Lance. And right now, I don't think it's close between Darnold, Lance, and Allen. I think Allen is pretty far behind. But with what he did today, I was also impressed. I'm not going to come on here and crap on a quarterback when I don't think he was bad. Like, if he's bad, I'll tell you. If he's good, I'll tell you. Brandon Allen was good today. I don't think he's going to play, but I think right now the preseason games are going to matter more this year than they have in the past 5 years. I think they are going to matter more this year than maybe the Alex Smith Kaepernick, where there was like Harbaugh was like, I might do it, I might not do it. Well, they were kind of splitting reps when they were in Green Bay. I don't know the exact year, 2011, I think is what it was, maybe 2012. But when that was happening, those were really important preseason games. This year, extremely important preseason games to define and determine who this team's backup quarterbacks are going to be. I would lean Darnold, Lance right now. But if Lance comes out and just rips this thing apart and tears it up and slices and dices that Raiders defense, I don't see why anybody wouldn't feel comfortable with him backing up Brock Purdy. He's not going to start, but backing up Brock Purdy. And right now, I think if you told me we're going to go into the season with Purdy at 1, Darnold or Lance at 2, I don't care who it is, I'm feeling pretty good because Purdy's showing signs and Darnold and Lance have been competent enough, if not been probably high-end backup material at worst in camp thus far. I like what all of these guys are doing, and I think as Niner fans, we should be really excited because if one of these guys goes down, I have confidence any one of them can win a big game for us right now. It's 8 games. It's 8 games. I get that. But I do think we should have confidence in this quarterback room more so than ever over the course of the past 5 years since Shanahan has been here. Josh Johnson's not in this building. That's a good thing. That's a really, really good thing. Tomorrow, training camp, August 5th, Saturday morning, 10:25 a.m. I will be there. I'm hoping to get you a podcast tomorrow evening. If not, it'll come out Sunday morning. If not, then Monday morning as we embark towards the end of fans being allowed at training camp. Last day is Monday before practice on Tuesday, open to only the media as the team goes to Las Vegas for joint practices and week 1 of the NFL preseason. I'm so excited. Thank you for watching and listening. I really appreciate all your support. I have done my best to be as unbiased as possible and bring you the reporting I know is true and try to get every single fact I can right and try to mold my opinion to what I believe is true. I hope you felt that through my reporting on Twitter, on Instagram, and on the podcast thus far. Again, thank you for listening. Thank you for all the kind words. It means a ton. I love doing this. I love being at camp and covering this team. And I appreciate you watching and listening and also following me on social media. And for the last couple of days of camp, for updates, you are still going to want to keep track of it on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter being 49ers_access, Instagram being 49ers.access. Follow us on there for all training camp updates and news surrounding the San Francisco 49ers. You can also, again, for the last time today at least, use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And finally, our last promo of the day, use our Fanatics link up above if you're on YouTube or down below in the description to buy some Niners merch and support the show. In the meantime, with that being said, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, leave a like on the episode on YouTube, or even a like on the audio version of the podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify. It doesn't matter. Tell your friends about the episode of the show and say, hey, I kind of like that Sterling guy. He's pretty cool. He's a pretty cool guy. He knows what he's talking about. And hopefully I do know what I'm talking about. I don't mind being wrong, but if I am, I'll let you know. I got no problem eating a bowl of crow if it actually happens. That being said, thank you for watching, listening. Leave a like, leave a review, tell your friends about the podcast and what we're doing here on social media. My name is Sterling Bennett. This has been the 49er Access podcast, and until next time, stay faithful.